If you've ever wondered why you react the way you do, why some areas of your life feel like you just have it all together, but other areas you feel like constantly pulled off track or you feel like a different person all of the time, this episode is for you. We're combining human design and parts work to show you not only how you were energetically designed at birth, but also how the experiences you've had could have shaped you and how different parts of you show up to protect you or manage different aspects of your life. And how this explains your unique way of operating, the areas you're conditioned in, and get pulled off track in, so that you can be like, oh my gosh, now I understand why I learned this coping mechanism and how this part of me shows up. And with that awareness, you can take intentional steps and just have this better sense of awareness of where you are influenced by others and how that conditioning affects all of your interactions. I'm so excited for you to hear this one today. It's something I am so passionate about, bridging the gap between this spiritual and energetic version that comes from human design and the psychological modality that is parts work. Let's dive in. I'm so excited to teach you today about two different modalities that I think together are going to give you just so much clarity about why you've experienced some of the things you've experienced and kind of just like the way that you are, how you're influenced, how you get pulled off track, and just so many amazing things that will explain a lot for you. These are not about making yourself wrong. They're about fully understanding why you show up the way that you show up and allowing yourself to just be your unique self. There are probably some pieces that you'll want to maybe adapt or show up differently. And once you have this sense of awareness, that'll be a whole lot easier. So, what we're talking about is human design and parts work. If you've been listening at all to this, you will know that human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth that teaches you how you're meant to show up and perform optimally, the way that you were energetically designed from birth, your unique way of being. Specifically, today we're going to talk about your human design centers. Now, there are 9 of these. They are related to the chakra system, and each of them has something to do with a different area of your life. And your centers can be defined or undefined. And when your centers are defined, these are areas where you show up more consistently and have consistent access to. This is also an area where you transmit energy out. So think of the centers as, like I said, undefined or defined, but they're also either a transmitter or a receiver. So when it's defined, you are a transmitter. This is where you are consistent and giving out your energy to the world. And when it's undefined, it's an area where you are a receiver, where you're more likely to be conditioned, taken off track, where you pick up things from everyone around you. I like to also think of undefined centers as being an empath, but in specific areas of your life. So traditionally, an empath is someone who feels other people's emotions. That's how we typically use that word. And so there is a center that is related to emotions. So that would be like a traditional empath when that center is undefined. But there's 9 centers. So I see it as 9 different ways you can be empathic or pick up on other people's transmissions. Now, in these undefined centers, not only are you picking up on other people's stuff, it is also likely for you to amplify it back out to the world. And so sometimes it's actually the people with, let's say, an undefined emotional center who seem wildly emotional, but it's because they're picking up on all the stuff around them. So the key here is when you have an undefined center for you to be aware of that, to know that you're way more likely to pick up on other people's stuff in this area so that you can start deciphering, is this mine or is this theirs? Also, because you are likely to pick up on other people's stuff throughout your life and that these are the areas you're more likely to experience conditioning in, ultimately, they're the area you're likely to learn the most lessons in and the areas you're likely to become the most wise in versus your defined centers where you just came naturally with more consistency in that area. Now, parts work is a modality in psychology that talks about how we all have these inner parts. Internal family systems is a really popular version of parts work. And it's called internal family systems because it refers to all your different parts being a family, like amongst each other. In a sense, this is kind of like having multiple personalities within you. And I'm not talking about the disorder, I'm talking about there's lots of little parts. And maybe you'll feel like I felt this sense of peace when you don't have to feel like all of you feel something. There's just like this little part of you who feels something. And I actually like to relate to all the different pieces of my human design chart as parts because I can say something like, oh, my projector part really needs some like horizontal time, or my projector part really needs rest, or my projector part is feeling really excluded and needs an invitation, or my projector part is feeling very bitter, right? So I make my projectorness a part of me rather than making it like an I am statement and making it my whole identity. And the same can go for each of these centers. So I could say something like my emotional center, mine's undefined. I like to refer to that as my people pleaser part. So my people pleaser part is having a really hard time having this conversation or is avoiding conflict or something to that effect. Again, it's not all of me, it's just there's this part inside that is having a lot of discomfort or a challenge. It makes things way more realistic and it also gives us some grace. So I don't use parts work exactly how it's utilized when it's on its own. And I do highly recommend learning that. When you explore parts work, you'll learn that, particularly if you go through the IFS route, the internal family systems route, you will learn that there are protector parts and manager parts. And so there's like parts of you that want to protect the other parts of you. And there's parts of you that want to protect you from bad feelings. And you'll just understand yourself more and how there's this like whole world just within you. Oftentimes, these parts came about because of something you experienced, usually within childhood, as with most things, because that's when we're really developing ourselves. And I like this combination between these two systems because human design is about the energy you came in with, how you were optimally created and wired to thrive. So that doesn't actually take into account your experiences because it's the energy you came in with. Where parts work does a lot of good at addressing experiences that you've had. And they just work so well together. So I've already kind of mentioned this emotional center part. And for me, my emotional center is undefined, which that I'm often influenced by people's emotions around me. And so that often means that I feel very, very uncomfortable with any bad emotions. Again, what I think of as a bad emotion, I don't actually think any emotions are bad, but what like somatically in my body feels very uncomfortable, those emotions, which typically is culturally trained, I avoid them, which means I also want to avoid the people around me feeling those emotions. For me, that's anger, that's conflict, that's sadness, that's crying. If you've ever heard me say, you feelings, this explains that so much. I've always felt like I don't know what to do with other people's feelings because it's so uncomfortable for me. And it's something I had to learn and is a work in progress of me coping with other people's discomfort because I feel it too. So there's this sense for me of not wanting to rock the boat or cause issues with others because I'm going to feel the discomfort too. So it's like, I don't want to do anything that makes you uncomfortable because it makes me uncomfortable. So I'm just going to avoid the whole thing. That's like the people pleaser, the codependency, the conflict avoidant part. And as with everything, now that I'm aware, I can intentionally choose to do otherwise. And that has been a lot of my work. My own personal development and growth work has been to be way more aware of my people pleasing part and choosing to handle things differently. Another example that personally has made a huge difference for me is the ego center. It's also called the heart center and the willpower center. And this isn't so much about ego in the sense of like conceitedness. This is about how we feel worthiness. This is about having the heart and the willpower to do something. It's about motivation. Mine is undefined. And so I've also struggled a lot with self worth, with worthiness issues. It's not consistent for me. Having a sense of self worth is not consistent. And so there's a part of me that feels a strong need to prove myself, to prove my worth. I overpromise things and I feel like I have to do more and do more and do more to prove my value or my worth. And so, again, developing this sense of self awareness around this part that feels like it has to continually do more to be worth more. And it takes a lot of inner work that, again, is a continuous work in progress for me to remind myself I don't have to prove anything and I'm already worthy. I don't have to do more. I don't have to be more. I don't have to overpromise. I don't have to overdeliver. Now, everyone's going to experience these things a little bit differently depending on their experiences. So each center has an area of life. The emotional center is around emotions, and the ego center is around worthiness. There's a center, the root center is kind of about stress and pressure and needing to get things done. The spleen center is about fears and instincts. The sacral center is about doing and creating. The identity center is about who you are. The throat center is about communication. The mind center is about processes and systems and understanding things. And the head center is about inspiration and ideas. We all have and utilize each of these centers. It's just how it shows up for us is a little bit different. And I think it gives so much nuance to our lives, whether we're transmitting in that area, whether we're receiving in that area, and how those parts of us handle those areas and the experiences we've had in them. And it's also important to know this, first of all, to understand yourself, but then you understand how your interactions are playing out because maybe you're like me and you have an undefined emotional center and you're impacted by other people's emotions. And maybe your partner has a defined emotional center. And with a defined emotional center, they experience emotional waves due to nothing. Literally, they might just experience an up or a down. They might be in a high or a low with no cause. That is normal for someone with a defined emotional center. But if you're an undefined emotional center, you're going to pick up and potentially amplify those feelings, and they might make you incredibly uncomfortable. So, this isn't about pointing fingers or blame or making someone right or wrong for the way they feel or experience these emotions. It's about understanding each other and having awareness and then choosing how to interact. It is all about awareness and intentional action. And it gives so much nuanced languaging to our experiences. It also explains a lot why we see other people and we're like, how? Like, how are you always so confident? Or why are you so different all of the time? Maybe someone has an undefined identity center and they do actually show up differently in all scenarios around different people in different places because they're not meant to be consistent with their identity. They're meant to be more flexible and more adaptable and more influenced by what's going on around them. And for those of us with a defined identity center, that's weird, right? But they're actually being influenced by us. So it's about understanding these dynamics of who influences who and how people are adaptable in different areas of their life, more nuanced areas of their life, and what parts of them might show up to protect or manage or just handle those specific situations. So I just want you to remember your centers aren't wrong, they're just you. Your parts are not wrong. They are a strategy that you came up with, not consciously, to protect yourself in some way from some experiences you've had. And giving yourself this languaging also is very helpful when you're communicating, particularly with a partner. Like, hey, there's a part of me that feels really uncomfortable with insert whatever you're feeling really uncomfortable with. Or it's not, I am inconsistent, or I am too emotional, or I am whatever. It's like, there's a part of me that is this thing, and I'm working through it, but I need you to know that this part of me exists. And I'm no longer hiding the parts. That's actually part of the goal of parts work, doing the work with the parts, is to stop hiding them and stop abandoning them. Often they rear their heads because they feel abandoned because they're the parts of us that we think are bad. And so we kind of shove them in the corner. So there's that like little part of you who knew they had to hide their emotions as a kid, and you keep shoving it away because you don't want to look at it. So it keeps rearing its head. When you can actually acknowledge that it exists and thank it for what it tried to do for you when you were younger, you get a whole lot more harmony amongst your parts. Now, I do have a paid training that walks you through each center and undefined or defined, so you can look up your own chart and go through and piece together where you're more consistent and where you're more likely to be off track and understand how the different parts of you can show up. And you could do this, for yourself. You could pull up your partner's chart or your kids' charts and you can look through and really understand how each of you functions on your own. And then also the dynamics amongst you, who's influencing who in what ways. You can develop a better understanding of your household dynamics and maybe whose emotions are influencing who and who has more confidence consistently and maybe who has more fears consistently and why somebody talks so much or has so many ideas all the time or why someone always feels pressure to get things done and maybe someone else seems like completely nonchalant about having things to do. These are all going to show up in those centers. And then you can understand a little bit more about how those parts show up. I just want to end this with reinforcing that none of this is right or wrong. It's about understanding yourself, understanding your patterns, understanding the way you were designed so that you can use it to your advantage, and then acknowledging those parts of you, changing your languaging so that you don't make your whole beingness wrong for certain things where you can just say a part of me feels this way or a part of me feels that way and you can start acknowledging that internal family of parts. I hope this resonated with you. It's one of my favorite things to combine human design and parts work because it's so important for us to understand how we are energetically designed, our blueprint, how we operate optimally, and how life has influenced us and how different parts of us show up in different circumstances and how we are influenced or we influence other people. And I think having this nuanced language on top of the awareness helps us to better relate to ourselves and to others and understanding that we are so multidimensional and complex and we really do have so much to learn about ourselves and each other. And I really think it helps deepen our connections once we connect with ourselves at this level. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. It has been a dream of mine for so long to bring these teachings to you and to help people better understand themselves so that they can connect better and live better and work better and, reduce the burnout, reduce the friction in their lives and find more ease and find more flow. And I know this will help you optimize your performance in a very personalized way as you get to better understand yourself. Thanks for tuning into Monroe Musings. I hope this conversation gave you permission to trust yourself a little more, to choose your nature rather than culture. If you haven't already, I would so appreciate you to subscribe to the show. And if you would like to explore your own human design chart or learn more about working together, please go to my website. And remember, going against the grain isn't just rebellion, it's coming home.